from schools across our nation. Homicide is the leading cause of death for Black male teenagers. Latino teen summer employment plummeted from 40.3% in 2000 to 26.7% in 2013. About 23% of Black males ages 16 to 24 have dropped out of high school. Many are in jail, prison, or a juvenile justice institution in the United States. These are sobering statistics. It is no wonder we hear a lot these days about justice for boys and men of color. Dr. Robert K. Ross is President and Chief Executive Officer of the California Endowment, a health foundation established in 1996 to address the health needs of California. Dr. Ross is putting the concept of justice for boys and men of color into action. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Robert Ross.
Patrick, you grew up in apartheid South Africa. I grew up in apartheid South Bronx. And here we are in South Los Angeles, leading the national charge to dismantle apartheid and injustice nationally. So this all comes together quite beautifully. And congratulations to the Empowerment Congress for its leadership. If you walk into, imagine if you, for a moment, you walk into a community hospital and you walk into the newborn nursery and you see 100 bassinets of newborn babies, in this case, all African-American infants, African-American male infants. The chances are of those 100 babies in that newborn nursery, 33 of them will go to prison. You touch one bassinet, prison. You pass two bassinets, you go to the third bassinet, prison. You heard from Sandra how we have over-incarcerated women for injustice issues. We have an incarceration factory, pipeline, superhighway, beast in this nation that is engulfing our people at astronomical and unacceptable rates, and it must be dismantled. It must be federal women's prison, 80% of the women in that prison have been either physically or sexually abused. For boys and young men of color, they reside at the most extreme end of this phenomenon, particularly African-American boys and young men. And I'm going to summarize for you in just a couple of minutes what we are doing and what we see as an opportunity to have a strategic focus to help us dismantle the incarceration pipeline, the cradle-to-prison pipeline, and replace it with an opportunity pathway. It's not everything that must be done, but you have to focus on a couple of things. Here's what we've discovered. Across this country, roughly 75 to 80% of young boys of color, Black and brown young boys in particular, in third grade are reading at less than grade level proficiency. The data shows between early childhood and third grade, you learn how to read. From third grade on, you read to learn. If you do not have a foundation of proficient literacy, by the time you get to third grade, you will stay behind. That is what the data shows us, and that those young boys, if those boys are turning into young men, will have academic failure in their future. If you miss 15 days or more of school per year, if you're chronically absent, the data shows you're likely destined for academic failure. If you are truant, and this is an issue taken up by our great Attorney General, Kamala Harris, if you are truant in the early grades, in either elementary school or middle school, very high likelihood that you're destined for academic failure. If you're suspended from school in this country, even one suspension to a Black or brown boy in this country, in studies that research came right here from USC, shows that even one suspension reduces the likelihood of you going to four-year college by 70% and community college by 45%. The data are telling us that our young boys are telling us at very early stages in life, I'm losing hope. I'm losing hope. You don't have to wait till someone goes to juvenile hall to realize that they're in trouble. And so the focus of our Boys and Young Men of Color campaign, also called our Sons and Brothers campaign, a $50 million commitment by our Foundation of California Endowment. We're working in partnership with others, not just statewide here in California, but nationally, is to focus on such early intervention points where we can bring resources and support around these boys and young men rather than pushing them away, marginalizing them, criminalizing them, and stigmatizing them at a very early stages of life. The other point that the research and data tell us, and this is true both of vulnerable, not just African American boys and young men of color, but young girls as well. Our young people in communities like the South Bronx, like South Los Angeles, like Richmond, like Compton, like Linwood, in Merced and Coachella, our young people are dealing with extraordinary amounts of toxic stress and exposure to trauma. They are carrying Afghani, Iraqi war veteran levels of post-traumatic stress disorder, but there's nothing post about it. It is persistent traumatic stress disorder, and we must recognize the roles that trauma and anxiety and stress our young people are dealing with. They show up in defiance in the classroom. And defiance in the classroom is not a bad kid or a bad girl or a bad boy. It's a child screaming for help.
That's right.
And we have to recognize that. And so we're working on a strategy on that. I just want to close with one opportunity that's in front of us. It's about a 3 to 4 year window. Imagine these millions of young people, particularly black and brown boys and young men, but vulnerable girls as well, in the state of California. Over here on this side of the room. On this side of the room, there are 2 big, giant bags of money. One bag of money comes in the form of the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare. We have got to figure out a way and make sure that every child and his or her family are connected to health care through the Obamacare pathway. We've got to get them involved. And of equal, if not more compelling moral persuasion, for our young people that are undocumented, we must construct a pathway to health care for the undocumented children and their families. Billions of dollars for Obamacare waiting to be leveraged and connected to these young people and their families. The second big bag of money, the local control funding formula in public education, increased educational equity funding dollars for children who are poor, English second language, or in foster care. There is a battle right now in local school districts to figure out how we're going to make sure that those young people get connected to those dollars. That is a local empowerment Congress battle we must take up. Our $50 million is chump change compared to the billions of dollars that can be leveraged if we fight that battle smartly and effectively on behalf of young people. So let's bring it. Thank you.